Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Welcome to Merryn Talks Your Money, the personal finance edition of Merryn Talks Money. In these bonus podcasts, we talk about the best strategies for making the most of your money. I'm Merryn Somerset Webb, and with me, senior reporter and money distilled author John Stepek. Hi, John.
Hi, Mel.
Now, I guess everyone's talking about personal finance this week. I'm a bit nervous about the budget. You nervous about the budget? Or are you more nervous or more looking forward to being entertained? Which way does it work for you?
We see this is one of those work-life balance dichotomies, whereas for work, it's immensely entertaining. For life, it's absolutely grim. And so half of me is hiding behind the sofa, and the other half is like a child before Christmas.
The other half is desperately going, laugh a curve, laugh a curve, laugh a curve.
yeah. You're having a laugher curve. Exactly.
We won't be having many laughs afterwards, I don't think.
No.
They come for the laughs, don't they? Right. Listen, this week we've got a question from someone who, will I think also be watching their budget very, very carefully. It's Hugo. The question is from Hugo. Hugo wrote quite a brief email, actually. He's asking for advice for 20-somethings who've got more than £50,000 in student debt. What should they be doing with the money they're earning? Should they pay off that loan, to the extent it's a real loan? Should they get on the housing ladder, or should they buy stocks and shares? So lots of things to think about here. We're quite pleased that Hugo is earning good money. I'm thrilled by that. But what we don't know is what student loan plan he's on, because there are so many. And if he's in his 20s, I think that puts him on, does that put him on 2?
Probably, because that's if he started his course between September 2012 and July 2023. So
okay,
actually, yeah, almost. It does. That'll be what he's on.
Plan to. But the essence of all the student loans are roughly the same. After a certain threshold, you pay 9% of your income towards your loan, regardless of how much you are earning. It remains the same. So the essence is the same. A large percentage of your income will go in what they call loan repayments, but you and I really think of as a tax. And you can make that tax go away by paying off the loan. And the extent to whether it's worth it or not is just about maths, isn't it?
Yeah. And the maths bit is the bit that makes it difficult.
Yeah.
I guess it's about maths, but it's also about having to make assumptions, which is the tricky bit.
Having to make assumptions about your future earnings, for example. I mean, what if, sake of argument, Hugo, who's earning very nicely at the moment, let's say that Hugo meets the love of his life, gets married, has 2 kids. Hugo's the one that gives up work to look after the kids. Good on you, Hugo, because his wife's a higher earner, etc. She stays at work. Suddenly he's earning nothing, and he may never again get above the threshold. Welcome to the ladies' world, Hugo. Sometimes you never make back up to your old income after your paternity leaves in your case.
I mean, Hugo, if I was you, I would make that your plan A. Marry a rich, high-achieving wife.
Marry up.
Yeah. Sorted.
Anyway.
Right, let's go to the pub. Yeah.
If only it was so easy. Anyway, so that's the point, that you are making all these assumptions about your future once you start talking about overpaying the loan or paying back the loan. And that makes it incredibly difficult, because obviously even predictive AI can't tell you how much you're going to be earning in a decade or 15 years, can't tell you who you're going to meet, where you're going to live, how you want to live, what kind of house you want to live in, how many children you're going to have, etc. No one can tell you that. So all you can do is make some rough guesses about your earning power and some rough guesses about any capital you might or not receive during your life. Now, I think probably the first place to start is, should you pay off your loan rather than saving to buy a house? And John, I think you would say, I'm going to put words into your mouth here, I think you would say save to buy the house.
Yeah, because I think it's reasonably straightforward, this question, because if you've decided that it's time to buy a house, and like it or not, and I'm not, completely a fan of this, but buying a house is like a life stage for almost everyone in this country. And so if that's what you need to do, then you need to save the money towards it. The one thing I understand about this is that the student loan, its impact on your ability to borrow is only in as much as it reduces your monthly income. So the fact that you've got 50 grand of debt doesn't matter. That doesn't count towards your mortgage. It's just in as much as it takes 9% off your monthly salary. So from that point of view, you don't need to worry about it in terms of getting a mortgage. So yeah, save up for the house deposit if that's what your goal is. I don't really see any exclusion to that.
Yeah. And I think it's also worth saying that, again, you know, the interest rates on student loans whack all over the place, but the majority of the time, it's probably true that the interest rate on your loan, which is not real interest, of course, but the technical interest rate on your loan is going to be lower than the interest rate on a mortgage, right? So if you're going to hold on to one kind of debt, it might as well be that.
Yeah, but also if you think of it as a tax rather than a loan, then the idea of having to keep the loan at a certain level is less of an issue. Because, you know, actually, I mean, especially the other thing is if Hugo is on plan 2, and I guess he must be, or almost certainly must be, that's going to get written off 30 years after he graduated anyway. So he will get that wiped clean before he's at pension age. So that's the other thing. I mean, some of the later loans are going to have less favourable terms.
Horrible. The new ones are the poor people who started in 2023. That loan sticks with them for 40 years. So that really is a tax. You can stop all the arguments about is it a loan or is it a tax by that. That is definitely a tax. It's with you for 40 years. And it takes your marginal rate of tax for high earners well over 50%. It's a scandal. I don't know why we put up with it. Young people, do something.
Protest.
Well, protest. Get out on the streets. Vote for someone who's going to make your tertiary education more efficient for you financially. But anyway, we'll come back to that in another podcast. So most likely, although this is not financial advice, it's just what would most likely be the better thing to do for most people: save up for your house as opposed to paying off your student loan in any kind of lump sum or overpayment. That's an inefficient use of money. But when it comes to anything else, now I think we would both agree, I'm not even sure we have to talk through this one, we would both agree that you should definitely continue to contribute to your pension through auto enrollment rather than pay off your student loan. That's a given, right?
Absolutely. And just in case you don't know, because that is because it's part of your overall compensation, your employer has to contribute to it. If you don't join auto enrollment, you're sacrificing X amount of your salary for absolutely no reason at all.
Yeah, so don't do that. So that's clear. The other bit, would it be a better idea to instead invest into stocks and shares? Do you know what? I'd like to run a little campaign. Join me in this campaign. I would like to stop saying stocks and shares.
Yes.
Nobody knows what that means. What does that mean? It means shares and shares, equities and equities, stocks and shares. Is it because it brings in debt as well? Are we talking about what?
I remember trying to look this up at one point, and it really, it's yet another one of those things like bulls and bears that is not entirely clear at all what the definition ever was or where it's originated. And I totally agree. It's like stocks and shares are the same thing. Now, they're both equities as far as we're concerned. So either change it to bonds and shares or just shares or invest.
Or why don't we just say invest? Would it be a better idea to instead invest? That's how we're changing the question. Removing stocks and shares, would it be a better idea to invest? Is it a better idea, John, to invest than to overpay on your loan?
I mean, that's a good question. And this is where all of the assumption stuff kind of comes in. Because... Well, yeah, so it depends.
You're running through so many different scenarios in your head, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
No idea what is happening in anyone's individual life. It's so difficult to say what the right thing to do is. I think what I would say, the starting point would be: do you have savings? And let's put the whole saving for a house deposit to one side for a moment. You shouldn't ever pay down any debt until you have a certain amount of savings. It's never a given you'll be able to get out new debt when you need it. So particularly if you've got cheap debt, it seems a good idea to make sure that before you even look at that, you've got your 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months worth of savings, or freedom money, as we like to call it, sitting in a bank account. Only then can you start saying, well, hang on, now I want to make a choice between my student loan and investing. Now, if you're young, and we're assuming that Hugo is in his 20s, he's going to be investing for the long term, or I hope Hugo will be investing for the long term. So we should assume that he will get a better return over 40 years or 30 years of investing in the equity market than his loan is costing him. Fair?
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Well, I guess, again, it slightly depends which scheme he's on. But if he's on the scheme we think he is, then that works.
Yeah, it is one of those things where the way to think about it is to look at how much is the debt costing versus what is my likely return in the stock market. And from that point of view, as you say, then all else being equal, then it probably does make sense to invest, especially, I suppose, because, again, if he's on the 30-year one, then by the time he's coming to take his pension out, then if there is stuff left, then it will get written off.
I think the other thing to say is that what might happen to Hugo's doing very well. Well done, Hugo. Actually, we don't know how well Hugo's doing. I keep looking at the £50,000 in student debt and thinking that Hugo is making £50,000. He might not be.
Well, but if he's in his early 20s and he's making enough to start paying off the loan, then he's not doing too bad. Like, he must be earning in at least the high 20s.
So maybe there'll come a point when he's earning £250,000, £300,000, and this whole problem just goes away. Wouldn't that be great for Hugo?
It would be. That would almost be as good as the rich partner scenario.
John.
Sorry.
I wish I'd never put the thought in your head. This is a feminist backlash we've got on this very show. So he needs to hope that this budget really does bring growth and productivity as promised, so that his income goes up very sharply and this problem disappears by itself.
Yes.
But the other thing we should say is there's a lot of emotion in here, isn't there? You know, how do you cope with debt? How do you feel about debt? How troublesome is it? Do you feel this hanging over you, or do you never think about it? How do you feel about it? Because that matters. You know, we can talk about all these numbers. I mean, obviously we're not doing very well because we can't come up with any specific numbers because of everyone's different situations. But when you really come down to it, it's about money, but it's also about living standards, life satisfaction, where you're headed. If this debt is a real problem for you emotionally, then you might need to take a different approach. Am I veering away from what this podcast is supposed to be about?
I mean, half the investment is about psychology. And although one reason for understanding these kinds of things is so that you can override when your brain is telling you to do something daft. You know, so if you are in that situation where you just can't handle the existence of this debt, then perhaps try and offset that with putting a little bit more to it than you need to, but perhaps not as much as you're wanting to, because in most cases it probably will be better to put it somewhere else. And actually the other thing is that we hadn't mentioned and I've just remembered is political as well. Right now, nobody's really talking about student loan forgiveness in the UK. I mean, it's happening in the US. You don't know what's going to happen over the next 30 years. And it's possible that at some point there would maybe be a debt jubilee where they say, actually, we're going to scrap the student loans, or, you know, a future government might decide that a whole host of people were just absolutely missold the whole idea of university education. That's just one small thing to factor into the mix. Probably this debt won't be cancelled, but there's a chance that it might be at some point in the future, in a way that your mortgage is never getting cancelled, or you know, your pension isn't going to magically, you know, appear by itself. Yeah.
It does make sense, and I think we've pretty much ended up with a general view that once you've got your student debt, you might as well just put up.
Especially if no one else is paying it off for you, because you know if your parents don't have the money to kind of have taken it away in the first place, then you're kind of stuck with it, and it feels like a low priority thing rather than a high priority thing.
Yeah, and if your parents were to give you a lump sum now, your grandparents were to give you a lump sum now, you'd be better off buying a house.
Yeah, actually, you would.
Probably. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's settled then. Although, of course, that was not financial advice. It was simply a ramble through the possibilities, and I hope, Hugo, that it was helpful. I rather suspect it wasn't, but I really hope it was. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Merryn.
Thanks for listening to this week's Merryn Talks Money. If you like our show, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, be sure to follow me and John on X or Twitter at MerrynSW and John_Stepek. This episode was produced by Summer Sadi, production support and sound design by Moses Andem. Questions and comments on this show and all our shows always welcome. Our show email is merrynmoney@bloomberg.net.